there, I'm Cath. Welcome to my channel made by Cath Craft. Thank you very much for joining me today. If you've watched any of my previous vlogs, you'll know that I'm in a different location today, filming somewhere else in my house. I'm actually at my sewing machine because today's vlog is all about showing you a tour of my sewing space, and I'm really looking forward to showing you around. Before I get started on showing you around where I sew and where I keep all my bits and bobs I use for sewing, I thought I'd talk about what I'm wearing today. So I've had a morning at home and I've been doing quite a few chores, so I wanted something fairly comfy and casual to wear. So I'm wearing this t-shirt dress, and I'll stand up so you can see the full thing because I've got a bit more space here. So it's a kind of t-shirt dress with a scoop neck and a gathered skirt. And the pattern I used to make this one is this pattern here. It's one of the big 4 pattern company patterns, which I don't often use, but I made this when I first started sewing actually. This is one of the first things I made. And it's McCall's M7561, and it's a really nice pattern actually. It's got some nice variations. You can do a standard sort of t-shirt dress with a scoop neck with long sleeves or short sleeves. It also has a really nice deep sort of scoop back option, which I think is quite pretty too. And then you can do a long skirt. There's an option for adding pockets and sort of 3/4 length sleeves. So there's quite a few different variations on a standard kind of t-shirt dress with gathered skirts. And actually, this was one of the first things I made, and this was made as a wearable toile. And because I was so new to sewing, I didn't want to spoil any nicer fabric, so I used this. Actually, this is a jersey bed sheet, so it's a stretchy bed sheet in just kind of a dark blue colour. So I just cut it out of that because I thought if it ends up disastrous, I won't mind too much because it's only a bed sheet. It actually came out better than I thought it would, and I really like it, and I've got a lot of wear out of it really. It's quite casual and comfy, and it just kind of goes with everything really because it's kind of quite classic. But that's what I'm wearing today, and now I'll move on to talking a little bit about my sewing space. So I don't have my own sewing room or my own sort of particular space where my sewing machine is always goes where I can sew. I have my sewing machine out on the dining table, and the dining table also doubles up as a table where we eat, and my children do homework here, and generally it's quite a busy place in our house. So historically, before my children were at school, I generally just get the sewing machine out and sew in the evenings, although now they're both at school, I have a bit more chance to get it out in the day too. So yeah, that's where I'm sitting at the moment, and the dining table is in like an open plan area in our house. We've lived here about 7 years. When we moved in, there was a separate kitchen and then kind of like a large room that was kind of a dining room sort of thing. And we had a wall knocked through, so it's now open plan. So we've got the kitchen, dining table and a playroom area. So it's a really sociable space, and I do like sewing here because, for example, in the evening my husband will be on the sofa and we can both watch a bit of TV while I sew, and he's quite kind. He doesn't mind too much the noise of the sewing machine in the background. So I do quite like it how it is. The only thing about it is that because I don't have my own dedicated space, I can't just pop and do a little bit of sewing here and there as I need to. It does involve getting my machine out, plugging it in, getting the tools out and everything. But yeah, I love it still. It's a great space, and because it's the dining tables here, the dining table's really quite nice and big, so it's perfect for cutting out fabric and for tracing patterns, so it works really well from that perspective. But what I'll do now is I'll take the camera and I'll turn it around and show you around a little bit more so you can see what I'm talking about, and I'll show you where I keep all my tools and my fabric and my patterns and that sort of thing. So this is where I sew and where I was just sitting. This is our dining table. And I've got my machine set up on the table, and this is my machine. It's a Pfaff Ambition 1.0, and I bought it about, I think possibly 4 or 5 years ago. And at that point I wasn't sewing clothes. I bought it because I had my granny's really old Toyota machine, and it didn't have a manual, and I wasn't sure how to use it very well. And so I went looking for a sort of basic beginner's machine because I wanted to do a little bit of crafty type stuff, and maybe making some cushions for the house and that sort of thing. And I went shopping with my mum, who used to sew a lot, but she doesn't sew much these days, she mainly knits. And I kind of went to a local shop and had a look at the machines, and this was really out of my budget, and I just fell in love with it. And I'm really pleased I got it because nowadays, with all the garment sewing I do, it has so many useful features. So yeah, this is it. Well, I love its pink and white for starters. I think it's quite pretty. Oops. It's one of the things I love particularly about it is it's got a built-in walking foot, so you can put that underneath here and it walks the fabric through, and I kind of think I've taken it for granted because I always have it on and it just makes sewing so easy. I don't know how I'd find a machine without it. Whenever I forget to put it on when I've changed the foot, I really notice it's not there. So that's great. And I've got all my, in my sewing machine, I've got in here, they're all my feet. Got quite a few feet there, like an invisible zipper foot and normal zipper foot and a stretch sewing foot and a few other things. And at the back I've got all just my tools and a few needles and things like that. Yeah, I've got my Microtex needles and that sort of thing. And when I'm sewing, I generally also have my sewing tin next to me. And in here I've got a pencil case, which I have kind of the pens I use for tracing. And I've got a pair of sort of general purpose craft scissors. They aren't as sharp, and I use them for cutting things like interfacing or anything that I don't want to risk blunting my proper scissors. And these are my proper scissors that I use. I do prefer scissors to a rotary cutter, but I've also got a rotary cutter in here, which I do use on particularly slippery, tricky fabrics. Then I've got my wonder clips, which I use a lot. I've got some different pins, some long flower head pins, some short ones. I've got a couple of these, which are great. They're they're by Rocking Stitch, and they're a sort of seamstress gauge, and it's got lots of different lengths on here. This is my imperial one, so it's all in inches. And they're really useful for things like checking hems and that sort of thing. And I've also got a metric one in here as well, down here. I've got my tape measure, a couple of seam rippers, a little pair of scissors. What else have I got in here? Some safety pins, some chalk, some more pins. Oh, and this is where I keep my needles. This is quite special because, well, it's a bit tatty because I've got some bits of thread in it. But this is quite special because my mum made it for me. So it's a little lady, and it's got my needles in here. So I think it's really lovely, and you can put a thimble in here too. That head's designed to hold a thimble. So I think it's really lovely because my mum made it for me. And she made me another one for my knitting needles as well, so I've got one for those. But yeah, I think it's really pretty and nice, and that's in there too. But yeah, that's my sort of sewing tin. I've got some, what do you call it, fray check for buttonholes. So these are all the bits in here that I use on a regular basis. So I generally, when I sew, I bring this tin over and pop it next to me, yeah, when I'm sewing. And this table is quite handy. It has a protective covering on it. We got this when we got the table because we thought it might get a bit wrecked because it's sort of solid wood. It's kind of table protector, but it's really good for sewing too. So it works really well for kind of protecting my machine and protecting the table, because I do move my machine about a bit to put the overlock on the table sometimes. So I'll be sliding my machine forward and backwards, so the table protector works really well. And I also have a cutting mat, which I pop on top when I'm using the rotary cutter, and I keep that underneath the sofa because it stays nice and flat under there. So this is the next area I wanted to show you, and it's where I keep a lot of my sewing bits and bobs. And this is in the kitchen now. It's in the corner of the kitchen, and if I just move around, you can see my sewing space is over there. There's my daughter's toy kitchen, this is the real kitchen, and this is my my place where I keep it all. So I'll just show you what I've got here on this table. I've got my overlocker here. It's a Brother 3034D with tray. I love the little tray because it's perfect for picking up all the little scraps I cut off when I sew. It generally stays here and it has a dust cover on, but I've taken it off to show you. But when I use it, I generally move it onto the table, or it sits on the kitchen worktop, and I'll just move it across as I need it. So I've had the overlocker about maybe a year and a half now, and I do use it a lot, but at the moment the project I'm planning on working on today I'm using French seams for, so I won't be needing it today, but it does get a lot of use there. And what else have I got here? I've got my sellotape dispenser, which I use for putting pattern pieces together, PDF patterns. This bag is full of fabric scraps. I kind of collect them as I go, and what I'm planning to do with them all is put them into the poof I'm planning to make, which is by Closet Core Patterns. So that's on my plans because I've got lots of fabric scraps I want to use up. And then this little box here is full of lots of haberdashery bits and bobs. I've got lots of elastic in here and here as well, lots of different sizes of elastic. Some ribbons in here, which I also use often. These little narrow ribbons I found really useful for stabilising seams on shoulders for stretch fabrics. In here I've got some buttons, some pretty flower ones, and lots of other buttons. They're in a bit of a jumble Every now and then I do get them out and organise them and see how many I've got of different ones and take a picture so I know what I've got. But I quite like rifling through them when I've got a project that I need buttons for and seeing what I've got. And then in here I've also got some more ribbons. I've got a couple of zips that I haven't used yet. What else have I got in here? Oh, some clear elastic. I think there's some stay tape in there. And yeah, just lots of little bits and bobs that I might need. So it's quite a handy box. And what I've got in here? Oh, some poppers. So some fastenings and things. And then moving on, this here is my thread box. And it's got loads and loads of threads in there. Whenever I start a new project, I try and use the thread I've already got. So they're all in there. And I've got quite a few colours, as you can see. And then this, I love, it's my bobbin holder. It's by Prim, and it's just so handy. Such a good way of keeping all the bobbins together. And I'm doing quite well at the moment. I do try and use the bobbins up for things like gathering stitches and things. So I've got quite a few empty bobbins at the moment, which is good. I hate it when I get to the point where they're all full and I need to put a new colour on. So that's there. Are my threads. In here are my weights, my pattern weights. I use those, yeah, when I'm cutting out fabric and that sort of thing. And I made them myself. They're metal washers that I got just on the internet. And I put 3 or 4 together and then just covered them in leftover bits of wool I had. So I've got lots of different ones here. And they work really well because they're quite a nice weight. And I think they're quite cute too. And it was nice to use up some old wool when I was making them. And then another tin under here. I do like my sewing tins, as you'll see. This one's got some overlocker threads in different colours. I'll put that back on there. And then in this box here, it's got a lot more sewing stuff. There's some more overlocker threads in here, some bigger ones that don't fit in my tin, some navy and black, so I use those a lot. And then I've got a few other sewing bits and bobs in here that I don't use quite as much. That's what's in here. I've got some rotary cutter blades, a knife sharpener, thimbles, some poppers, that sort of thing. This is one of my new tools, which I'm really pleased with. It's a Prim turning set, 3 different sizes, and I've opened that and used that and it works really well. I should have got one of those ages ago. I've got a couple of rulers. I've got my Prim pliers and lots of poppers in here. I've got my tailor's ham, which is so useful for being able to iron things like shoulders and anything that's curved. What else have I got? I've got tracing paper and interfacing. I've got a calculator, some swimmer elastic, a muslin, which I often use for putting over the top of delicate fabrics to protect them when I'm ironing them or if I'm ironing interfacing on, so I use that a lot with the ironing. I've got some masking tape, my overlocker bits and bobs, quite a few different cords for things like if I'm making a pair of joggers, put through the waist, some coloured pens, and that's about it in this box. So those are kind of my main sewing supplies I reach for. And there's not space to store my patterns here. So my patterns are stored somewhere separate. My kind of sewing stuff is sort of dotted around all over the house really. So I'll take you now and show you where my patterns are stored. Okay, so I've now moved to the corner of my living room. And this is another little pocket of the house that I've kind of carved out for my sewing stuff and knitting stuff too. So I thought I'd show you. So this little basket here holds a lot of my sewing patterns and they just about all fit in here. And it's not the most organised selection of patterns ever, but I generally can find what I need. So I've got lots of paper patterns, and then at the back here I've got a few of my PDF patterns in envelopes. So that's all those. And then I'm not sure if you're interested, I'm going to show you anyway my knitting supplies. These are my knitting bags. I've got lots of wool in. All my knitting needles are in here. And I've got my little knitting tin here with a couple of more needles down here. And this is my knitting tin, and it's got in a couple of stitch counters. This is a new toy. It's a chunky cable needle, which I'm looking forward to trying. I've got another tape measure and another little, this is the other friend of the other little lady, which holds my needles. These are my knitting needles, they're a bit chunkier. And I've got some little, can't think what you call them, but you use them in knitting to kind of keep your place on the knitting. And then I've got some sort of stitch holders down here. And a few wonder clips in there for when I'm sewing my knitting up. And some more different size knitting needles. So that's my little knitting tin. So my knitting stuff doesn't take up quite as much room as my sewing stuff, but it's all down here. I'll just scale out in the corner of our living room. So I'm back in my dining room area now, and I thought I'd show you where my current work in progress is currently living. So here's my sort of sewing space, and then down here, this is my children's craft drawer over there, and so next to it, I again squeeze a little bit of space for more of my sewing. So this pile here is some fabrics I'm planning to work on, and underneath I've got some projects that I've kind of started but I'm not quite finished in these plastic envelopes, which I found quite useful. And I think it was a tip by someone on Instagram, the Zipper Foot, Emma. She mentioned these plastic folders, and I think it's a great way to store all of your bits and bobs for particular projects. So for example, this one under here is a swimsuit toile I'm planning to make, and it's got the pattern and the fabric and also the matching thread all together, so when I want to start it, it's all there. And I think I've also got underneath here, there's my mask making, my mask making folder. So that's full of all the supplies I need to make face masks when I want to do that. And then down here on the floor is the current pattern I'm working on, and part of it's also up here on top. And it just sits down here because my children don't usually go behind here, so it's generally quite safe. And this is a sneak peek of a dress I'm making, and I'm making the hinterland dress out of this beautiful Cath fabric. So I'm looking forward to showing you that when it's finished, but I've not got too far through that one, but that's what I'm going to work on a little bit today. So yeah, that's pretty much where I sew. So I hope you enjoyed that little tour of my sewing space. One day I'd love to have my own sewing room, but for now this works really well for me. And it's not too much of a faff to get my machine out when I need it, and it does make me keep quite tidy with all my sewing stuff. Yeah, if you have any questions about any of the tools I mentioned or anything you saw, then do drop me a line down below. And if you enjoyed seeing my sewing space, I'd love it if you give me a thumbs up. And if you haven't subscribed, I'd love it if you would subscribe too and click the bell icon so you can hear about my future vlogs. So now I guess I'll say goodbye, because I'm hoping to just squeeze in a little bit of sewing before I pick my children up from school, and I'll look forward to showing you my dress once I've finished it. So thanks again for joining me, and I hope you have a great day. Bye bye.